he basically destroyed Bruno Fernandes. And I think he did it, Ollie, not because he believes it, but because there's a lot of eyeballs on that Overlap podcast. And
you think?
Roy Keane knows the more eyeballs, the more clips, the more money in the back pocket. Everything leads back to money. There's a reason that Roy Keane and these pundits say these things. It's not because they believe them. Roy Keane doesn't think Erling Haaland's a League Two player, like he said last season. Roy Keane doesn't actually think Bruno Fernandes is crap. He's saying it because it's great entertainment. Like, not to lean on politics too much this week, Ollie, but one of the most absurd things I've seen in recent times was Donald Trump just turning to that group of reporters and being like, this is great telly, in the spat with Zelensky. And it's like, that's like, oh my God, do you really think like that's the crux of this is great telly? And that's what Roy Keane's thinking. These pundits, they hardly believe a word they say, mate. It's just great optics, it's great telly, it's great clicks. Anyway, we digress slightly. But, well, I mean, do you think Roy Keane really believes that on the Overlap? When he's screaming at Ian Wright, who, by the way, is half a metre away from him. He's literally shouting at him, saying Bruno Fernandes is crap. That's the crux of his argument.
It's a very ugly... It's a very ugly spat where Ian Wright is trying to just make a calm, level-headed point, and Roy Keane is losing his mind. And I am so impressed by Ian Wright kind of just keeping calm throughout it, and the other two kind of chip in every so often with like, what about Roy Keane's going ballistic? I think Keane is apoplectic because he knows what it's like to be a leader in that United team, not this United team, but at United. And he knows that what it requires, or he thinks what it requires as it did when he was playing, is a bully. You know, I was chatting with an ex-player this weekend, actually, about this. We kind of joked about it. And he'd been managed and had worked with Roy Keane in the past. And he said, when I turned up for those training sessions, particularly the first one, knowing that Keane was in charge, I was terrified about doing anything wrong. And I worked twice as hard as I'd worked for any other manager because I knew I was going to get an absolute rollicking. And I think we're at a point in world football where that attitude doesn't work with these players anymore. Players don't respond to that rollicking in the same way like our parents were probably like hit with a cane at school. That didn't work for our generation, and now the generation after us doesn't respond to the clip round the ear hole or you know, the bollocking you get from your old man or something like that. That it's becoming more and more kind of hands-on, lovey-lovey, which is great, obviously, particularly in parenting, but in football as well. I think it's very much more that arm around the shoulder gets more of a response than the rollicking from a manager or anything like that. And I think Keane is a man who is struggling because that very animated and very obvious barking at people on a football field to lead them isn't visible. And I think he only knows that as the way to lead and to drag a team that's not doing very well up by their kind of boot hole, so to speak. And because he can't see that, that's what makes him so angry and frustrated. So I do believe that he doesn't think Bruno Fernandes is a good, and I think actually Keane gets a bit lost in that he should be saying Bruno Fernandes isn't a good leader of that team. As a footballer, he's good, but he's not able to make others better around him, which you want A, from that position, and B, as a leader at Manchester United. And I think that's kind of the argument that Keane, when he gets so wrapped up in his emotion in that moment, is trying to make more than anything else. Not to be one of those people that's taking what he says and then goes twists it to suit my own viewpoint, which may also be what I'm doing right now. But I think that's what
you've nailed that, Ollie. I do think you've nailed it. I think it's very, very difficult for your Roy Keane. Roy Keane is the summit of this. Obviously, Gary Neville and Scholes and lots of other Manchester United pundits do the same thing, but Roy Keane's the absolute summit of this. And it's incredibly difficult to comprehend because when Roy Keane was coming through, certainly you're suggesting his teenage years at least, there was no red carpet, I don't think. There was no massive influx of money. There was no sponsorship. Sure, Roy Keane made a great living out of the game, was on a very healthy wage throughout his career. No question about that. But it's a combination now, I think, of seeing the 18-year-old that's just signed a pro contract coming out of training in a Bentley. It's that combination, and also exactly what you said. You can't, this expands beyond football, by the way. You can no longer bully people in the workplace. Like, it just doesn't work. You know, if it happens in the workplace and you bully someone and someone shouts at you and screams at you from a metre away in the office, Ollie, well, first of all, it just doesn't happen. But second of all, if it does, you're going straight to HR, you're putting it out on Twitter, you're WhatsApping half the team. Whoever did that is in massive, massive trouble. And for better or for worse, I don't know about how that feeds into the hierarchical nature and discipline and behaviour of general society. I'm not sure. But 100% you cannot treat footballers like that. They are loaded beyond belief. They've got an agent, they've got a PR team, they've got a social media account, they've got massive influence. You can't scream and shout. And that is why, actually, not to venture too far into different topics here, but that is why I believe that the authoritarian, shouter, screamer, obsessive era of managers is somewhat over. And we are now going into the Arne Slot. This is the reason why Carlo Ancelotti's been so successful at Real Madrid. Because he obviously is not going to shout at Vinicius Jr. or Jude Bellingham. Obviously, that's not Carlo Ancelotti. It's calm heads, stay calm, don't get too animated on the touchline, just manage the egos. I mean, how much actual coaching even does he do? I'm not doing a disservice to Ancelotti. I'm trying to be complimentary here. But he's literally, these footballers they're so influential, they're so powerful, they're so rich, they're so unbelievably talented. All you're doing is spinning the ego plates with all of them and just calming them down, keeping them on the right track, making sure no one gets upset at each other. And so I think Arne's lots of representation of that. It's 2025. The world looks very, 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 very different now. And that's why some of the punditry, I feel, I often wonder whether that whole, the Carragers and the Nevilles, I probably think, Ollie, as top pundits, they've probably only got 5 or 10 years left. In the way that, your Alan Hansons and stuff got phased out of the punditry game.
Yeah,
I don't think it's something you can do forever.
You don't understand the environment that football's played in now. And I think understanding the environment is as key as understanding things like the tactics and whatnot. I actually think we place a lot of discussion on football tactics and overthink a lot of it in our analysis, because everyone's begging for analysis of the game, right? Why did this happen? Why did that happen? And I think we have a lot of people that aren't great at analysing a football game that will make points that are either painfully obvious or they're trying to create an analysis for themselves, when actually understanding the environment that these players are in, I think, is almost more important than anything else. And I think the fact even that a few weeks ago, Dave, we would, and we have done on previous podcasts, talking about Arteta and his crazy things with the pickpockets in the dinner table and all that kind of stuff. And you and I sit here and go, that's ludicrous. That's actually who would respond to that? Because I think we're probably of that generation that would respond more to a Roy Keane type, just grab him by the neck and let's freaking go. And even we don't, on reflection, there might be people that are, 14, 18 right now that go, oh yeah, I see what he's saying, Arteta, with these metaphors and what he's trying to do. And we just laugh at it because that's not the kind of generational response that we had to it. Maybe we're getting phased out of being able to talk about football already, and NASP needs to pivot away. And I'm telling you, the Figure Skating Weekly podcast is just a fingertip away if we really want to do it.
We're going to have to hire a 19-year-old intern, Ollie, that could do our social media and kind of haul us up on certain things. But I think you make a really salient point. And I think that also if you're 14, 16, 20 years old, Ollie, you're looking at Paul Scholes and you're being like, I think I remember him. The guy's won 11 Premier League titles, but some people look at Paul Scholes now and be like, I don't really know who that was. Anyway, this is kind of roundabout talking about Manchester United and Ruben Amorim. I mean, they went out the FA Cup. I mean, the demise of that football club is unbelievable. 1 billion in debt, Ollie. Do you think that a lot of the criticism with Manchester United, people criticise Bruno Fernandes, Ruben Amorim, Ineos, etc., but essentially, is it just the Glazers? They took over the football club, they stripped it, they got them in 1 billion worth of debt. So anything Ineos are doing now, and I do want to talk about the further job cuts actually at Manchester United, but anything Ineos are doing now, Ollie, it is all because of the decisions that have been made by the Glazers. I mean, Manchester United are 1 billion British pounds in debt. Just for context, Liverpool, for example, are 100 million. So Manchester United are a 10x. That's insane. A 10x in debt of Liverpool. When you think those two clubs 10, 15 years ago were felt pretty level.
Yeah, it undoubtedly comes down to the Glazers. I think we've discussed, even when poor Eric Ten Hag, he probably got a very nice payoff and is doing quite nicely, actually. When he went, we described him as, you're the guy that's been put in charge of steering the Titanic after it's hit the iceberg. You can't do anything. The big bulk of the ship is going in that direction and trending in that way. And all you can do is valiantly pretend that you're steering it in one way or the other. And I think Amorim's
keep the captain's hat on.
Amorim is just the next guy up. Ten Hag has has whipped the cap off, realised there might be a lifeboat there filled with money, and has jumped himself into the water and swum for shore. And Amorim's gone, well, I'm second. I'm the next man up. It's got to be me. I can do it. And he might be a great communicator. He might be, a great tactical masterclass mind in football.
He's not.
But whether he is or he isn't, at the moment, he doesn't have a set of players that are consistently producing whatever great tactics he's trying to implement on this side. We've seen fleeting moments of it where you think United, like the goal Bruno Fernandes scores is a wonderful goal. It's great. And if United were
Ruben Amorim hasn't done that.
No, but if United were creating consistently passing moves like that, you'd go, well, they are trying something. But it's not. It's few and far between those moments, those brief moments where you think, oh, that's a cracking bit of football from their side.
Also, I feel that Premier League year, Ollie, they're in a relegation battle. It's just because those three clubs in the Premier League and the bottom three in the Premier League are so poor that they're not. In a different year, they are. I'm not saying they're going down, but they're 4-6 points off the relegation zone as opposed to the 12-13 they are at the moment.